The massive warship hung in the darkness of space like a sleeping beast. It was called the Silent Dominion, and it was the flagship of the Valorian conquest fleet. For 3 years, this ship and 40 others had circled Earth, watching and waiting. They studied the blue planet below with hungry eyes and cold patience. Fleet Commander Tovik stood at the observation window, his forearms folded behind his back. His gray skin reflected the soft glow of the control panels around him. He had conquered 12 worlds in his career. He had crushed rebellions and broken armies. But he had never seen a planet quite like this one. Earth was beautiful. It was also terrifying. The Valorian scientists had classified it as a Category 7 Deathworld. This was the highest danger rating in their system. The planet had extreme temperatures that could freeze or burn flesh. Its atmosphere was filled with oxygen, a gas so reactive that it could cause fires and rust metal. The ground shook with earthquakes. Mountains exploded with liquid rock. Massive storms swept across the oceans, destroying everything in their path. And in every corner of this hostile world, predators hunted and killed without mercy. Yet somehow, impossibly, intelligent life had evolved here. Humans, they called themselves. Tovik turned away from the window as his second-in-command entered the bridge. Relis was younger than Tovik, with lighter gray skin and eager eyes. He carried a data tablet in his 2 primary arms. "The final reconnaissance report, Commander," Relis said, offering the tablet. Tovik took it and scrolled through the information. He had read hundreds of these reports over the past 3 years. They all said the same thing. Humans were physically weak. They had no claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor. Their senses were dull compared to other species. They could not see in the dark. They could not hear high frequencies. They could not smell danger approaching. "Soft creatures," Tovik muttered. "How did they survive on such a world?" "Intelligence and tools, Commander," Relis answered. "They built shelters to protect themselves from the environment. They created weapons to fight predators. They developed medicine to heal their fragile bodies." Tovik nodded slowly. This was the standard pattern for Deathworld species. Unable to compete physically, they evolved bigger brains. They learned to work together. They built civilizations from nothing but rocks and dreams. But intelligence alone did not concern Tovik. The Valorians had faced intelligent species before. They had superior technology, superior numbers, and superior discipline. The invasion of Earth would be quick and efficient. Within one rotation of the planet around its star, humans would be a conquered people. Their military capabilities? Tovik asked. Relis pulled up another screen on his own tablet. Primitive but numerous. They have explosive projectile weapons, flying machines, and armored ground vehicles. They also possess nuclear weapons capable of massive destruction. Nuclear weapons? Tovik raised what passed for an eyebrow among his species. They would destroy their own planet? They have used them before, Commander. Twice. Against each other. This gave Tovik pause. He walked back to the observation window and looked down at the swirling clouds of Earth. A species that would use planet-killing weapons against its own kind was either very foolish or very desperate. Perhaps both. They fight each other constantly, Relis continued. Their history is written in blood. Wars over territory, resources, beliefs, power. They have never known lasting peace. Then they are divided, Tovik said with satisfaction. Divided enemies are easily conquered. Yes, Commander. However, our analysts have noted something strange. When faced with external threats, humans have shown a tendency to unite. They put aside their differences and work together against common enemies. Tovik waved a dismissive arm. They have never faced an enemy like us. Their primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their flying machines cannot match our fighters. They will fall like all the others. The invasion was scheduled for the next day. 40 warships would descend upon major population centers simultaneously. Shock troops would secure key infrastructure. Leaders would be captured or eliminated. Within hours, the planet would belong to the Valorian Empire. But Valorian doctrine demanded one final reconnaissance before any invasion. A close observation of the target species under stress. This helped predict how they would react when the attack came. Would they fight or flee? Would they panic or organize? Would they sacrifice themselves or surrender? We need a stress observation, Tovik said. Something natural. I want to see how they behave when their own world threatens them. Relis checked his tablet. There is a large storm system approaching the eastern coast of a landmass called Asia, specifically a nation called South Korea. The storm will make landfall in approximately 6 hours. A storm? Tovik was unimpressed. Storms were common on many worlds. Not just any storm, Commander. This is what humans call a typhoon. Wind speeds exceeding 250 of their kilometers per hour. Water surges of 15 meters above normal sea level. It is a significant threat, even by Deathworld standards. Tovik considered this. A major natural disaster would reveal the true nature of these creatures. Would they abandon each other and fight for individual survival? Would they hide and hope for the best? Would they accept death with dignity or scream into the void? Send scout probes to this South Korea, Tovik ordered. I want full visual and sensor coverage of the affected areas. Focus on their emergency response, their social behavior, their decision-making under pressure. Yes, yes. Commander. Relis bowed his head and began issuing orders to the sensor teams. Tovik remained at the window, watching Earth turn slowly below. The blue and white and green of the planet was deceptive. It looked peaceful from up here. Beautiful, even. But he knew the truth. Down there, in the thin layer of gas that humans called atmosphere, was a world that constantly tried to kill everything on it. And yet humans thrived. They built cities and raised families. They created art and music. They loved and fought and dreamed. It was strange, Tovik thought. Almost admirable. He pushed the thought away. Admiration was for equals. Humans were not equals. They were targets, resources, future subjects of the Valorian Empire. Tomorrow, the invasion would begin. But first, he would watch them face their own world's fury. He would see what they were really made of. The scout probes launched from the silent Dominion, invisible streaks of light falling toward the blue planet below. They would arrive in time to witness the typhoon's wrath. They would record everything. Tovik did not know it yet, but what those probes would capture would change everything. The invasion that was supposed to start tomorrow would never happen, and the mighty Valorian conquest fleet would retreat from a planet it had not even attacked, all because of what happened in a city called Bizan when the storm arrived. The sky over Bizan had turned an ugly shade of green. Kang Do-hyun had seen many storms in his 15 years as a firefighter, but he had never seen a sky like this. It looked sick. It looked angry. It looked like the world was about to end. He stood at the window of the fire station, watching the first rain bands sweep across the city. The drops were hitting the glass so hard they sounded like bullets. In the distance, lightning cracked the sky every few seconds, turning night into day and back again. The weather service upgraded it again, said a voice behind him. Yoon Ji-woo walked up beside him, her phone in her hand. She was small, barely reaching Do-hyun's shoulder, but she was the toughest person he knew. They had worked together for 8 years. She had saved his life twice. He had saved hers 3 times. They did not keep score. How bad? Do-hyun asked. Category 5 equivalent. Winds over 250 kilometers per hour. They are calling it Typhoon Myra. Ji-woo put her phone away. The Coast Guard has grounded all vessels. No one is allowed on the water. Daohan nodded. It was the smart decision. The only decision. No boat could survive waves like the ones that were coming. Anyone caught on the water tonight would die. The fire station was quiet. Most of the team had been sent home to be with their families. Only the essential crew remained. Do-yoon and Ji-woo, Park Sun-woo, the youngest member of their team, barely 23 years old. Han Min-ji, who had been a rescue swimmer in the Navy. Bae Jun-ho, who could fix any machine ever built. And old Kim Tai-soo, who had been doing this job longer than anyone could remember. 6 people to cover the entire coastal district of Busan. 6 people against the worst storm in 50 years. The power went out at midnight. One moment. The fire station was bright with artificial light. The next, darkness swallowed everything. Emergency generators kicked in a few seconds later, bathing the room in dim red light. That was the main grid, Junho said, looking up from his phone. Half the city just went dark. As if in response, the radio crackled to life. Emergency calls started flooding in. A building collapse in Nampo. A car swept away by flooding in Gwangali. A gas leak in Simeon. Do-yoon and his team went to work. They spent the next 3 hours racing through streets that had become rivers. They pulled a family of 4 from a car that was sinking in floodwater. They evacuated an apartment building that was tilting dangerously. They rescued an old woman who had refused to leave her home until her cat was found. Sunwoo found the cat hiding under a bed, terrified and hissing. He carried it out anyway, getting scratched bloody in the process. By 3 in the morning. They were exhausted, soaked, running on nothing but adrenaline and duty. That was when the radio call came. Coastal Rescue Unit, this is Harbor Control. We have a distress signal. Fishing vessel Bright Star, 12 souls aboard. They are capsizing approximately 3 kilometers off Haeundae Beach. Do you copy? Do-hyun grabbed the radio. Harbor Control, this is Coastal Rescue. We copy. What is the Coast Guard status? There was a pause. When the voice came back, it was heavy with something that sounded like shame. Coast Guard vessels are grounded. All rescue helicopters are grounded. Naval assets are unavailable. Available. Conditions are too severe for any official rescue operation. Another pause. Coastal Rescue, we are informing you as a courtesy. There is nothing anyone can do. Those people are going to die. Do-hyun looked at his team. They were all listening. They all heard the words. 12 people, 3 kilometers out, in waves that could crush a ship like a toy. No help coming. No hope left. Ji-woo met his eyes. She did not say anything. She did not need to. After 8 years, they could read each other like books. The inflatable, Do-hyun said. It is rated for Category 3 conditions at best, Junho replied. This is Category 5. I know. We could die. I know. Junho nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked toward the equipment room. I will check the motor. One by one, the others followed. Sunwoo, still bleeding from his cat scratches. Minji, already pulling on her wetsuit. Tai-soo, who should have retired years ago, but kept coming back because someone needed to train the young ones. Only Ji-woo remained, standing in front of Do-hyun. You. No, this is probably a one-way trip, she said. Quietly. Yes. You. No, the smart thing would be to stay here. Yes. You. No, those 12 people might already be dead. Yes. Ji-woo was silent for a moment. Then she smiled, a small sad smile that Do-hyun had seen many times before. Then let us go save them anyway, she said. 20 minutes later, they were on the water. The waves were mountains. That was the only way Do-hyun could describe them. Living mountains of black water that rose and fell with terrible purpose. Each one seemed determined to swallow their tiny boat whole. The rain was horizontal, driven by winds that screamed like dying animals. Visibility was almost zero. The only light came from their flashlights and the constant explosion of lightning overhead. Do-hyun gripped the motor controls with numb fingers. He had no idea if they were going the right direction. The compass was spinning uselessly. The GPS had died 10 minutes ago. All he could do was point the boat toward where he thought the distress signal had come from and pray up behind him. His team held on to whatever they could grab. Sunwoo was vomiting over the side. Taisoo was praying, his lips moving silently. Minji was scanning the darkness with binoculars that were useless in these conditions, but gave her something to do. And Jiwoo sat beside Do-hyun, one hand on his shoulder, her voice calm and steady as she called out the waves. Big one coming left. Turn into it. Now hold, hold. Next one is smaller. Use it to push forward. High above them, invisible in the storm. Valorian scout probes recorded everything. On the silent Dominion, Commander Tovik watched in growing confusion as 6 humans in a rubber boat sailed into certain death. What are they doing? He asked no one in particular. Rellis checked his instruments. They appear to be attempting a rescue, Commander. That is impossible. The conditions are lethal. Yes, Commander. They seem to be aware of that. Tovik leaned forward, his forearms gripping the console. He could not look away from the screen. The tiny boat was barely visible among the massive waves. Every few seconds, it would disappear completely, swallowed by water, and Tovik would think it was over. Then it would appear again, still moving, still fighting. Why? Tovik whispered. Why would they do this? He did not know it yet, but he was about to find out. The first time the boat capsized, Do-hyun thought they were all going to die. One moment they were climbing a wave that seemed to reach the clouds. The next moment, the wave curled over them like a giant hand and slammed them into the water. The world became chaos. Up and down lost all meaning. Cold water filled Do-hyun's nose and mouth. His safety line pulled tight against his chest as the boat flipped completely over, dragging him with it. Training took over. Do-hyun stopped fighting the water and let himself go limp. He counted to 3, feeling which way the bubbles were going. Then he kicked hard toward the surface. He broke through the water, gasping for air. Rain and spray immediately hit his face, but he did not care. Air was air. He was alive. Sound off. He screamed into the storm. Jiwoo here. Janho here. Minji here. Taisoo here. Silence. Sunwoo. Do-hyun yelled. Sunwoo, respond. Nothing. Just the howling wind and the crash of waves. Then, barely audible, a weak voice. Here. I am here. Do-hyun turned toward the sound. His flashlight caught a glimpse of orange. Sunwoo's life jacket. The young man was floating about 20 meters away. His safety line stretched to its limit. He looked barely conscious. Pull him in. Do-hyun ordered .ju-nho, and Taisoo grabbed the safety line and started hauling. The waves fought them every inch of the way. Twice Sunwoo went under. Twice they kept pulling. Finally, they dragged him over the side of the still capsized boat. Is he breathing? Jiwoo called out. Minji pressed her ear to Sunwoo's chest. Yes, he swallowed water, but he is breathing. Good. Now help me flip this boat. It took all 6 of them working together. They pushed and pulled and cursed and prayed. The wind tried to tear the boat from their hands. The waves tried to drag them under. But inch by inch, they got the inflatable right side up again. They climbed back in, soaked and shivering and exhausted. Sunwoo was coughing up seawater in the bottom of the boat. The motor had flooded and would not start. I can fix it, Junho said, already pulling out tools from his waterproof bag. Give me 5 minutes. We do not have 5 minutes, Jiwoo said. She pointed into the darkness ahead. Look. At first, Do-yoon could not see anything. Then lightning flashed, and he saw it. The bright star, or what was left of it. The fishing boat was on its side, waves washing over its hull. Debris floated everywhere. And clinging to that debris, barely visible in the darkness, were people. They are still alive, Do-yoon breathed. Not for long, Tae-soo said grimly. The water temperature is 15 degrees. Hypothermia will set in within 20 minutes. Death within 40. Then we better hurry. Junho, forget the motor. Everyone grab paddles. We row. They rowed Dot on the silent Dominion. Tovik was standing now, his face inches from the view screen. He had stopped giving orders. He had stopped thinking about the invasion. All he could do was watch. Their vessel capsized, Relis reported, stating the obvious. They should be dead. They are not dead. No, Commander. They righted their vessel and continued toward the target. How? Tovik demanded. How is this possible? Relis had no answer. The scout probe zoomed in on the rescue boat. Tovik could see the humans now, see their faces twisted with effort as they fought the ocean with nothing but wooden paddles. One of them was injured, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. He kept rowing. One of them was clearly in pain, holding her side with one arm while paddling with the other. She kept rowing. The young one who had nearly drowned was sitting up now, coughing and shaking, and he picked up a paddle too. They are badly hurt, Relis said quietly. They cannot survive much longer in these conditions. They know that. Then why continue? Tovik did not answer. He was watching the small woman, the one called Jiwoo, according to their radio intercepts. She was shouting something to the others. The translator struggled with the words, but eventually it produced a phrase. She is saying, "They are counting on us. Will you not stop?" We never stop. The boat reached the wreckage of the bright star. Do-yoon could hear screaming now, rising above the storm. Voices crying for help. Voices praying. Voices saying goodbye to families they would never see again. There, Minji pointed. I see 3 of them on that piece of hull. I see more in the water. Sungwoo called out, his voice hoarse. At least 5. Spread out, Do-hyun ordered. Minji, Tae-soo, take the swimmers. Jiwoo, Junho, help me get the ones on the hull. Sungwoo, you stay with the boat and keep it stable. They went to work. The first survivor Do-hyun reached was a young man, maybe 20 years old. He was crying and shaking so badly he could barely hold on to the debris. When Do-yoon grabbed his arm, the young man screamed. It is okay. Do-hyun shouted over the wind. We are here to help. Can you move? My leg, the young man sobbed. Something hit my leg. I cannot feel it. Do-hyun looked down into the black water. He could not see anything, but he could guess. A broken leg may be worse. The young man was not going to be able to help himself. I am going to lift you. It will hurt, but I need you to stay calm. Can you do that? The young man nodded, tears streaming down his face. Do-yoon took a breath. Then he dove under the water, wrapped his arms around the young man's waist, and pushed upward with everything he had. Pain exploded through his shoulder. Something was wrong. He had pulled a muscle or torn something. It did not matter. He kept pushing. The young man screamed as his broken leg was moved. Jiwoo appeared beside them, helping to drag the survivor toward the boat. 1 down. 11 to go. They worked for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of diving into freezing water. 20 minutes of lifting bodies that were too cold and too heavy. 20 minutes of fighting waves that never stopped trying to kill them. Jiwoo broke 3 ribs when a piece of debris slammed into her chest. She gasped, doubled over in pain, then straightened up and kept working. Tae-soo saved the woman who was already unconscious. He held her above the water with one arm while swimming with the other. His old body pushed far beyond its limits. Minji pulled a child from the wreckage, a girl maybe 8 years old. The child was not breathing. Minji performed rescue breathing while treading water in 20-foot swells. And somehow, impossibly, the child started coughing, and Do-yoon kept count in his head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 survivors. All 12 accounted for. That is everyone. John-ho shouted. We have everyone. Do-hyun looked at the boat. It was dangerously overloaded now. 18 people crammed into a space meant for 8. Water was sloshing over the sides. The waves were getting bigger, not smaller. We need to go, he said. Now. The boat turned toward shore. And then, as if the ocean was angry that they had cheated it, the biggest wave yet rose up behind them. Tovik watched the wave on his screen. It was at least 20 meters tall, a moving wall of water that would crush anything in its path. The tiny boat had no chance. None at all. Commander, Relis said softly, they are going to die. Tovik said nothing. He could not look away. The wave struck. The wave hit them like a hammer from God. Do-hyun felt the boat lift beneath him, rising impossibly fast. For a moment, they were flying, suspended on the face of a water mountain that blocked out the sky. He could hear screaming all around him. The survivors. His team. Maybe himself. He could not tell anymore. Then they were falling. The boat came down hard, slamming into the back of the wave as it passed beneath them. The impact threw everyone forward. Bodies crashed into bodies. Do-hyun's face hit something hard, and suddenly he could not see out of his left eye. Blood was pouring down his face, warm against the cold rain. But the boat was still floating. Somehow, impossibly, they had not capsized. Sound off. Do-hyun yelled, wiping blood from his face. Everyone sound off. One by one, voices answered. His team, the survivors. Everyone was still there. Everyone was still alive. Do-hyun, your head, Ji-woo said, appearing beside him. Even in the darkness, he could see the concern on her face. I cannot see out of my left eye, he admitted. Too much blood. Let me look. No time. We need to keep moving. Another wave like that and we are done. Ji-woo hesitated, then nodded. She understood. They all understood. The only way out was forward. I will guide you, she said, moving to his left side. I will be your eyes. Just focus on driving. Do-hyun found the motor controls with numb fingers. John-ho had gotten the engine running again at some point during the rescue. Do-hyun did not know when. Time had become meaningless. There was only the storm and the mission and the need to survive. He gunned the motor, and the overloaded boat lurched forward on the silent Dominion. Commander Tovik was pacing back and forth across the bridge. He had given up trying to maintain his composure. His officers were watching him with confusion, but he did not care. He could not stop thinking about what he was seeing. How far to shore? He demanded. Relis checked the coordinates. Approximately 2 kilometers, Commander. Can they make it? I do not know, Commander. The conditions remain extreme. Their vessel is severely overloaded. Several of the occupants are injured. Logically, they should have died already. Logic has nothing to do with this, Tovik muttered. He turned back to the view screen. The probe was following the boat now, tracking its painfully slow progress through the storm. Every wave threatened to swallow it. Every gust of wind threatened to flip it. And yet it kept going. In the boat, Do-hyun could see nothing but blood and darkness and rain. Ji-woo had become his entire world, her voice cutting through the noise of the storm like a lifeline. Wave coming from the right. Turn into it. Good. Now straighten out. Small one ahead. You can ride over it. Left. Turn left now. He followed her commands without thinking. His body moved on automatic, hands adjusting the motor, weight shifting to balance the boat. Blood kept dripping into his eye, but Jiwoo would wipe it away every few seconds without breaking her. Stream of directions. The survivors huddled in the bottom of the boat, holding each other for warmth and comfort. The old fisherman, Cho Byung-ho, was praying out loud, his voice barely audible above the wind. The little girl Minji had saved was conscious now, crying softly in her mother's arms. The young man with the broken leg was unconscious, which was probably a mercy. How much farther? Sungwoo asked, his voice shaking with cold. I do not know, Taeyeon admitted. I cannot see the shore. I can, Taesu said suddenly. The old man was standing at the front of the boat, squinting into the darkness. There, lights. I see lights. Do-hyun felt something loosen in his chest. Lights meant people. People meant help. They were going to make it. Everyone hold on, he shouted. We are almost there. The final kilometer was the longest of Do-hyun's life. Twice more, massive waves nearly swamped them. Twice more, they somehow survived. The motor coughed and sputtered, nearly dying 3 times. Junho kept it running through sheer force of will, his hands never stopping their work even as the rest of his body shook with exhaustion. And then, finally, miraculously, the waves began to shrink. They were in shallower water now. The beach was close. Do-hyun could see people on the shore, dozens of them, holding flashlights and waving. Emergency vehicles were parked on the sand, their lights flashing red and blue through the rain. We made it, Jiwoo whispered. Her voice cracked on the words. We actually made it. The boat hit sand with a grinding crunch. Immediately, people swarmed toward them. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, police officers. Hands reached out to grab the survivors and lift them to safety. Taeyeon tried to stand and nearly fell. Jiwoo caught him, wrapping her arm around his waist despite her broken ribs. Easy, she said. It is over. We did it. Medical personnel surrounded them. Someone was shining a light in Do-hyun's eyes. Someone else was pressing bandages to his head wound. He pushed them away gently. The survivors first, he said. Take care of them first. Sir, you need medical attention immediately. You have lost a lot of blood. I said the survivors first. The paramedic looked like she wanted to argue. Then she looked at Do-hyun's face, at the blood and the determination, and something else that she could not quite name. She nodded and moved toward the boat. Do-hyun watched as the 12 survivors were carried off the beach. The young man with the broken leg. The little girl and her mother. Old Byung-ho still praying, still thanking God for the miracle of their survival. Then Byung-ho saw Do-hyun. The old fisherman stopped moving, stopped praying, stopped everything. He stared at Do-hyun with eyes that held 1,000 questions. Why? Byung-ho asked, his voice breaking. Why did you come? You could have died. You should have died. The Coast Guard said no one was coming. They said we were already dead. Do-hyun did not know what to say. He thought about the question seriously, turning it over in his mind. Why had they gone? Why had they risked everything for 12 strangers? Because you needed help, he finally said. That is what we do. When someone needs help, we go. But the storm, the waves, it was impossible. Do-hyun shrugged, then winced as the movement sent pain shooting through his injured shoulder. Impossible is just a word. It does not mean anything when someone's life is on the line. Byung-ho stared at him for a long moment. Then the old man began to cry. Not quietly, not with dignity, but with great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. He reached out and grabbed Do-hyun's hand, squeezing it tight. Thank you, Byung-ho said through his tears. Thank you. Thank you. Don't squeeze back. You are welcome. Then his legs finally gave out, and he let the paramedics catch him. High above, in the cold darkness of space, Commander Tovik stood motionless on the bridge of the silent Dominion. Around him, his officers were silent, staring at their screens with expressions that ranged from confusion to something that might have been awe. The storm was beginning to weaken. The rescue boat had reached shore. All 18 humans had survived. "Commander," Relis said quietly, "what do you want us to do?" Tovik did not answer immediately. He was still watching the beach, where the human called Do-Hyun had just collapsed. Medical personnel were swarming around him now, working to save the life of a man who had nearly given his life for strangers. "I need to think," Tovik finally said. "I need to think about what we have just witnessed." He turned and walked off the bridge, leaving his confused officers behind. He had a lot of thinking to do. Commander Tovik did not sleep that night. He sat alone in his private quarters, staring at a wall covered with maps of Earth. Red marks showed invasion landing zones. Blue marks showed military targets. Green marks showed population centers to be conquered. He had spent 3 years planning this invasion. He knew every detail, every contingency, every possible outcome. Or so he had thought. Now he sat in darkness, replaying the rescue footage over and over on a small screen. 6 humans in a rubber boat. A storm that could kill anything. 12 strangers who should have died, and yet everyone survived. How? Tovik had conquered 12 worlds in his career. He understood military strategy. He understood technology and tactics and logistics. He understood how species behaved when faced with overwhelming force. They fought, or they fled, or they surrendered. These were the 3 options. These were the only options. But what he had witnessed tonight did not fit any of those categories. The humans had not fought the storm. They had not fled from it. They had not surrendered to it. They had simply refused to accept its verdict. They had looked at certain death and said no. And somehow, impossibly, death had blinked first. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," Tovik said. Relis stepped inside, his posture hesitant. "Commander, the fleet is awaiting your orders." The invasion was scheduled to begin 4 hours ago. "I am aware. Shall I give the order to proceed?" Tovik was silent for a long moment. Then he asked a question that surprised both of them. "Relis, what do you think of humans?" "Commander?" "Before tonight. Before we watched that rescue. What did you think of them?" Relis considered the question carefully. "I thought they were primitive, Commander. Physically weak. Technologically inferior. An easy conquest. And now?" Another long pause. When Relis spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Now I am not sure what to think, Commander." Tovik nodded slowly. He stood and walked to the observation window. Earth filled the view, blue and white and green. The storm had passed now. The sun was rising over Asia, painting the clouds gold and pink. "Tell me about their emergency response systems," Tovik said. Relis pulled out his data tablet. "They have multiple layers, Commander. Professional services like firefighters, police, and medical personnel. Trained volunteers who respond to disasters. Military units that can be deployed for rescue operations. And," he paused, "and what?" "And ordinary citizens, Commander. Untrained civilians who simply show up when disaster strikes. They bring food and water and blankets. They open their homes to strangers. They donate blood and money. They help in whatever way they can. Why? The data is unclear, Commander. Our analysts have struggled to explain it. The behavior does not align with standard survival models. Helping strangers provides no evolutionary advantage. It consumes resources that could be used for personal survival. It makes no logical sense, and yet they do it anyway. Yes, Commander. Consistently and reliably, across all cultures and time periods. When disaster strikes, humans help each other. Tovik thought about this for a long time. Outside, Earth continued its slow rotation, indifferent to the fleet of warships lurking in its shadow. What about their soldiers? Tovik asked. They're warriors. Are they similar? Relis nodded. In many ways, yes. Human soldiers frequently sacrifice themselves for their comrades. They charge into enemy fire to rescue the wounded. They stay behind to cover retreats. They throw themselves on explosives to protect others. He paused. There is a concept in their military culture called "no one left behind." They go to extraordinary lengths to recover their fallen, even when the cost is high. And these rescue workers we observed tonight, they were volunteers? Mostly, yes. Some are paid professionals, but many are volunteers. They train for years to run toward disasters that others flee from. They put their lives at risk for strangers. And they consider this— Relis searched for the right word. Normal. Tovik let out a long breath. He had been a soldier his entire adult life. He understood sacrifice. He understood duty. But Valorian soldiers fought for glory, for conquest, for the expansion of the empire. Their courage was rewarded with wealth and status and power. These humans fought for nothing. For strangers. For people they had never met and would never see again. They broke their bodies and risked their lives and asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. It was the most terrifying thing Tovik had ever seen. Calculate our expected casualties for the invasion, he ordered. Relis tapped at his tablet. Based on standard projections, we expect to lose approximately 15% of our ground forces in the first wave. Higher if the humans mount an organized resistance. And if they fight like those rescue workers? If they refuse to accept defeat? If they keep coming no matter how many times we knock them down? Relis was silent. Calculated, Tovik demanded. I cannot, Commander. The variables are too uncertain. If every human fights with that level of determination, if they refuse to surrender even when all hope is lost. Relis shook his head. The casualties could be catastrophic. For both sides. Tovik nodded. This was what he had feared. He turned away from the window and faced his second-in-command directly. Relis, we came here to conquer a Deathworld. A planet so hostile that no species should be able to survive on it. We expected to find creatures beaten down by their environment, weakened, ready to submit to a superior force. Yes, Commander. Instead, we found something else. We found a species that has been fighting their world since the day they were born. Every storm, every earthquake, every disease, every predator. They have fought it all. They have lost countless battles. And they keep fighting. Tovik paused, gathering his thoughts. Do you know what that rescue proved tonight, Relis? It proved that humans do not know how to give up. They do not accept defeat. They do not abandon each other. They will fight and suffer and die for strangers they have never met. He shook his head slowly. How do you conquer a species like that? How do you break creatures who do not understand the concept of being broken? Relis had no answer. Tovik walked back to the wall of maps. He looked at all his careful planning, all his detailed preparations. 3 years of work. The conquest that was supposed to make his name legendary throughout the Empire. Then he reached out and pressed a button. The maps disappeared, replaced by a blank wall. Cancel the invasion, he said. Relis stared at him. Commander? You heard me. Cancel the invasion. Recall all scout probes. Order the fleet to withdraw beyond this system's outer planets. But Commander, the Empire will want to know why. They will demand an explanation. Then give them one. Tovik turned to face his subordinate. Tell them we found a species that has already conquered their world. Tell them we found creatures who run toward death instead of away from it. Tell them we found a people who would rather die helping strangers than live by abandoning them." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that might have been respect. "Tell them we found humans, and we decided that some battles are not worth winning." The Valorian conquest fleet withdrew before sunrise. 40 warships turned away from Earth and disappeared into the darkness between stars. They left no trace of their presence, no evidence that humanity had ever been in danger. The invasion that was supposed to begin that morning never happened, and no one on Earth ever knew how close they had come to extinction. In a hospital in Bizan, Kang Do-hyun opened his eyes. The room was bright with morning sunlight. His head was wrapped in bandages. His shoulder was immobilized, and the fourth dripped steadily into his arm. Everything hurt, but he was alive. Ji-woo was sitting in a chair beside his bed, her ribs taped, reading something on her phone. When she saw him stir, she looked up and smiled. "You slept for 14 hours, she said. The doctors were getting worried. "Everyone make it?" Do-hyun asked. His voice was rough, barely a whisper. "Everyone made it. All 12 survivors. All 6 of us." Ji-woo put her phone down. "The news is calling it a miracle. They are calling us heroes." Do-hyun shook his head slightly, wincing at the pain. "Not heroes. Just did our job. That is exactly what heroes say." A nurse came in to check his vitals. Then a doctor. Then hospital administrators who wanted to thank him. Then reporters who wanted to interview him. Do-hyun sent them all away except Ji-woo. When they were alone again, he stared up at the ceiling for a long time. "Do you think we made a difference?" he asked finally. "Those 12 people. Do you think their lives will be different because we saved them?" Ji-woo considered the question. "I think every life matters. I think every person we save goes on to touch other lives. The grandmother who gets more time with her grandchildren. The child who grows up and becomes a doctor. The young fisherman who falls in love and has a family." She shrugged, then winced at the movement. "We saved 12 people last night. Who knows how many lives that will affect over the years?" Do-hyun smiled slightly. "That is a good answer. I know. I have been practicing it." Outside the hospital window, Bizan was slowly returning to normal. The storm damage was being repaired. Life was going on. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a fleet of alien warships was retreating from a planet they had decided not to conquer, all because 6 humans had refused to let 12 strangers die alone. Do-hyun did not know any of this. He would never know. He would live out his life as a firefighter.